listening to the Motherhood Experience, a podcast where you are part of the conversation with moms, for moms, and by moms. Let's jump into this episode with me, your host, Val Kleppen. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. So glad to have you joining me today, where I visit with Natalie Wolfskill. Natalie listened to, I think it was Jessica Mefford's podcast episode and reached out to me and was like, this would be fun. I think I would like to be a guest. And we had such a fun conversation. I was so glad to get to hear about her motherhood journey. I think that you will enjoy it as well. And before we get into the episode, I would just like to kindly remind you and ask for you to share our episode, our podcast, give us a thumbs up, a like, wherever you are on social media or not. You are my publishing team. You are my social media promotion team. And I thank you very much for helping us get this podcast in front of other moms who might enjoy the conversation or need the encouragement from it. So having said that, I would like to introduce you to Natalie Wolfskill. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Natalie, to the Motherhood Experience. So glad to have you joining us today.
Thanks. I'm excited to do a podcast. First time, so.
Yeah, and this is our first time talking, and I'm excited to hear and jump into your motherhood story. So all the listeners of the podcast know we start every episode with ages of children, stage of motherhood. So why don't you let us know ages and stages for you?
Okay. Well, right now I'm kind of, I guess I'm getting into the teenage years. I have a daughter who is 12, soon to be 13 here this fall. A son who is 11 and soon to be 12 this fall. And another son who is soon to be 10 here this fall as well. All fall birthdays. So we'll be starting into our second year of junior high school for the two older kids, and the other one's still in elementary. And so we're kind of into the my daughter's really into sports, so we're into running for the sports, and my son is into the science and asking big questions that I have no answers for. So, and then the youngest one is still just he's still trying to figure out if he wants to be 10 or if he still wants to act like he's 5 sometimes. So,
I think that is a thing with that age.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, personal experience maybe is why I say that. But so it sounds like your three kids are pretty close together. Was that how you wanted it to go, or is that just how it happened?
A little of both, I guess.
Yeah.
My husband and I met. We started talking about kids right away because we were in our 30s when we met, and I'd watched a few other friends struggle with fertility issues. So I told him when we got married, I said, "Hey, here's the deal. I want to have kids, but I don't want to get married and we do our thing for 5 years and then decide to start having kids and then find out that we can't have kids or that we're going to have issues. Like, if we're going to have issues, I'd like to know sooner than later." And so I guess right after we got married, we just decided we'd start trying, and our daughter came along 3 months. Well, she was not born 3 months after we got married. We found out we were going to be welcoming her to our family 3 months after we were married. And then so she was actually supposed to be born in December, which would have been when she was supposed to be born. It would have been about 2 weeks before our anniversary, our first anniversary. And then she decided, because she always has to be on time or early, she decided to come at the end of November instead.
Okay.
So she was not a surprise, but a surprise just when she showed up into this world, because we thought we had about another month before she was supposed to come out, and it was not so.
So did you go into preterm labor, or were there some complications and she had to be delivered early?
Nope. I just went into labor, and it's kind of funny because my doctor, when I first went in, they told me that my due date would be like December 10th, I think it was. And then in and amongst from when I first went in and my first 2 or 3 appointments, I was in Sioux City doing a clinical for my schooling. And so that's where I first went in. And then I moved back to my hometown because I was done with my clinical. My husband was working up around the area of my hometown in South Dakota. And so then I changed doctors too. So when I changed doctors, then that doctor told me that she wasn't going to be due till December 17th. And 6 o'clock on November 21st, my water broke. And we were just moving into our house in Springs, and we had gone over to my mom's to do some laundry because she wasn't there, and we didn't have a washer and dryer yet. And so he went downstairs to do laundry, and I'm like, I'll go into the bathroom. And I went in the bathroom. Well, as I was walking to go into the bathroom, my water broke, and I called down to my husband, and I'm like, babe, I think maybe my water might have broke.
And
like,
so
what?
I was going to ask, did you know when it happened that it was your water breaking, or did you think like,
Well,
I didn't get to the bathroom soon enough?
No, I think I knew. I don't recall thinking that I, just had an accident or anything. I was pretty sure because it just was just all of a sudden it just, no control over it whatsoever,
Yeah.
And so when I called him, he comes running up the stairs. He's like, "What?" And I'm like, I'm pretty sure my water just broke. And he's like, what do we do? He's like, we haven't even done a trial run yet. And I'm like, well, we sink or swim, I guess, because here's our trial run. And so that was 6 o'clock on the 21st, and at just a little past midnight on the 22nd, she was born.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
that went quick for your first.
very quick. Yes.
Wow. I would also
think
just
God
like
knows that I was a pansy, though. And that I would not be able to handle too much pain.
Okay, well. I mean, is that something we need to verbally tell him? Because if so, there are some things I would like to chat with him about as far as my own pain tolerance level. But wow, so that's incredible. So then your second child was how? Is there over a year between them or less than a year?
1 year, 2 days.
A year and 2 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my word. Okay.
Yeah.
And was that term, or was he early as well?
No, he was term. Actually, I was induced with him because I did end up with my daughter. By the time my doctor realized that I hadn't done the glycemic test or anything, it was too late to do it with her. So when I got pregnant with my son, then we did the glycemic test, and I was gestational diabetes, on the verge of it. So I had to watch everything that I ate and, change my diet with that. And so my doctor just advised that we induce with him. And so actually he was supposed to be born. His due date was supposed to be the 23rd is when we went in to be induced with him. And she was on the 22nd of November. So we went in early that morning to be induced and got induced, and we hung out and walked around the hospital halls a lot, and some more, and some more, and yet some more. And so finally about 9:30 that night, my doctor comes in and she's like, "We're going to try this again tomorrow. This kid's not coming out yet." Okay. So we kind of settled into the hospital for the night, and we were just going to sleep. I think I had actually started to fall asleep, and all of a sudden my water broke. And so about 3:30 that morning, my second child was born. And so we always tease him because he still is very much on what we call Jaxty time, where it's like he's just going to go at his own pace, and when he gets there, and that's how he rolls.
Yeah.
And my daughter, like I said, very much so, like she has to be somewhere at 6:30, and if you're not there 5 minutes before 6:30, you're late. Like,
I resonate with that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's an oldest child thing. I don't know, but I definitely resonate with. Actually, it's not an oldest child thing, and I'll tell you why, because my husband is also an oldest, and it's a family thing. We call it
Yeah.
Kleppen time. And his
Always
family,
late.
yeah, his family will admittedly say, "Oh, we're on Kleppen time."
Yeah.
But I am now a Kleppen, but I do not run on Kleppen time.
Well, I'm not one to be late either, but there are days I may get there just right on the nick of time. There's other times I get there early,
I
but you
think
can
too.
guarantee that I'll be the last one to leave usually, though. So
I think too, with kids and different things going on, and I'm not always early. I'm not even always on time, but I'm always flustered if I'm not.
Right. Yep.
But because of different things going on, it's just hard to get there when I want to every time.
And living out in the country throws in a whole nother aspect to it too.
Right. Oh, and I suppose, if any of the listeners were excited about this, like I am, Natalie is from South Dakota, but presently lives in Wyoming. So 2 of my favorite states, obviously, are represented in this podcast today. So about your third, then, was that also pregnant right away, normal pregnancy?
So after we had the first 2, it was like, let's take a little break here. Well,
let's slow down.
Back up. Yeah, I got to back up to the part with between my first and my second. So I'd gone into my doctor, and she gave me the all clear after I'd had my daughter, after the 6-week checkup. And so as I'm walking out, she was an older gal, my doctor, kind of old school, and as I'm walking out, she's like, "Okay, well, you're free to go procreate again." So she's the one that really, I think, just set that in motion, no, not really, but at the time we had just decided, we had my daughter, and we just thought, well, if it happens with the next one, and it happened quickly after my first one. It probably was partly because when we first got married, we were 2.5 hours apart from each other, because I was in Sioux City and he was over spraying in central South Dakota. And so we didn't see each other a whole lot after our marriage. Weekends, and if it was crappy weather, he'd come and hang out in Sioux City with me, and otherwise he was working and I was working. And so actually when we got pregnant with Satabria, we were kind of surprised because we just had not seen each other a whole lot at that point. Yeah. So then we just thought, well, then with the second one, whenever this one comes, the same thing, like I said, I'd watch my other friends with infertility issues and not getting pregnant and stuff. And so it's just like, you know what, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And like I said, he was meant to be right after she came out. And I'm thankful that they're that close in age, though. So then after he came out, though, then we're like, okay, let's take a little break here, let's get our bearings here again, and figure out what the heck we're doing with these 2 tiny little humans that are now in our care. And so it was, go ahead.
Well, I was just trying to figure in my head. So this year, is it 14 years married that you'll be celebrating?
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Okay. So I have a question about this then, because it was the same thing. My husband and I have been married for 21 years. And at first, it was a weird story about if we were or were not going to have children. But when we started, taking family seriously, whether or not we could have children because of the infertility spike was it was a real question, a real concern. And so our oldest is 13. So we had her 7 years after, or I got pregnant with her 7 years after we had been married. But do you think more and more today that people are like you were, where it's like, well, if I'm going to have infertility issues, I want to know? A lot of people I know are having infertility issues. Do you think that's more and more common?
It's hard for me to judge because, like I said, I was in my 30s when I got married, and my friends a lot of my friends were married in their 20s, and that's when they were struggling with the fertility. And so I guess for me, I guess it's probably more of an age thing, like depending on the age, maybe like in your 20s, you don't really think about that, right?
Mm.
And especially if you get married in your 20s, you think, oh, we got time. So I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah, it was just a random thought I
But
had because
yeah.
I think when we were first married, that was not something that I was thinking about, was whether or not I would struggle to get pregnant. But then I think as time went on and other people were
Mm-hmm.
struggling, I wondered if that would also be a possibility for us. But I think like as time has gone on now in these last 14 years, I think there is a rise in complications, getting pregnant,
Right.
inability to get pregnant. And so it is more of a conversation now than maybe it was 15 or 20 years ago.
Right. Right. And yeah, I would have never thought about it had I not seen and talked with my friends who had gone through it.
Yeah.
And had I been married in my 20s, I would have been like, no, let's go do and see some things first before we have kids too. Or yeah.
So not having children until in your 30s, do you feel like it was harder for you to keep up with motherhood and life in general?
I don't know. It's been an experience. I guess kind of maybe I should go back to my youngest son. So my youngest son, I can remember my husband and I, weird place to have a conversation like this, but we were at my family reunion, and my family reunion we have every year, but we do sometimes we'll have a DJ come in and we do a dance or whatever. And so anyways, I can remember clearly that we were dancing to a slow song. And this would have been in July of 2013 because my son was born in November of 2012. So we took a lot of time off between kids. But that July then, so he wasn't quite a year old, and we're like, maybe we should start trying for another one. I think a third one is what we need here. And so then ended up getting pregnant with him, and so he was born in September of 14. But just as we were getting ready to have him, some different things came up, and we're just like, we don't really feel like this is where we're supposed to be anymore, because at this point we were still in South Dakota. And we don't really feel like Springs is where we're supposed to be. And so I have been looking for jobs over in Sioux Falls area, and he got a phone call from a guy here in Wyoming that he knew from growing up and living in the area, because we live on my husband's family ranch here in Wyoming.
Nice.
So anyways, this guy, he owns a business in town, and he had just bought a plane, and he called my husband and asked if he would be interested in flying for him and being his pilot. And so at the same time, I had put in an application in Sioux Falls, and so we were debating like, which way do we go, where do we go, and so it was just kind of like, okay, God's gonna let us know. If I get the job in Sioux Falls, that's where we go. If this pans out, then we'll head back to Wyoming. And so that's where we ended up. So a week before my son was born, my third son, we had decided that we were going to be moving back out here to Wyoming. Not back out here. We hadn't lived in Wyoming yet. So yeah, we decided we were going to move to Wyoming. So through all that, DJ, my husband, started working. He was supposed to start November 1st. So that gave us, my son was born on the 30th of September. That gave us the month to get our house packed up. And I was still working full time. So I had to give
And
my
you're
notice
old.
at work.
How old was your oldest at that time? Like 4?
Oh no, she was not quite 3 yet. She turned 3 a month and a half after my youngest son was born.
Oh my word.
Yeah. Yep. So in the meantime, I was still on maternity leave too, and I'm like, I'm not leaving my job until they get somebody in there and I can kind of help train them, and I can't just say I'm going on maternity leave and then come back and put 2 weeks notice in either. So he came out and started working in November, and I was still on maternity leave with my youngest. So the kids and I came out and stayed in Wyoming with him for that month. And then we went back when I had to go back to work and stayed back in Springs for about 2 months yet while I finished out my job. And part of it was when we made this decision to move to the ranch, I told him, one, I am not going to ranch. I don't want to ranch. I want to live on the ranch. I don't want to ranch. Like, I want to be able to still go home, go back and see my family. I want to travel as my kids get older, and having cows and everything my husband's talked about ranching was like, you never get to leave the ranch, like besides to go into town to get supplies for the ranch or to go to school. And so I'm like, we're not ranching. We'll go live at the ranch. You can work in town. You can fly. I said, I've never lived in the country either at this point. So I'm like, here I am, 3 young kids. We move out to Wyoming and we're 12 miles out of town, which is not far. But when my mother in law is gone to school for work all day long, my father in law was gone because he was working a job in a different town. He was gone all day. My husband was gone all day. I kind of lost my mind for a while there. I did not know what to do.
Was
Go
it
ahead.
just that there were like no other people around? Did you feel totally isolated? Were you mad? Like all
A
of the
little,
above?
all of it, I think, I told DJ, I said, we move out to the ranch, I'm going to be home. Well, and we decided too that I would stay home with the kids because there's just no jobs that would pay enough for me to put 3 kids into daycare. Like, it just did not make sense. Looking back, maybe it might have made sense just for my sanity, but the best thing was to be home with the kids. And so I told him right off, I said, school events, even though I might not know who's playing in the games or anything, I'm still going to take the kids to the games. We're still going to go to the games. So that's just a way for me to be able to get out and see people. And thankfully, right before the kids and I moved out here, when we were here in November with him while he started his job, my mother-in-law and a bunch of other ladies in town had started a Bible study group. And so she invited me to go to the Bible study group. And so I got to know a couple ladies from the church and from the Bible study group through that. And I did know a few people just from when we've been out to visit DJ's friends and stuff. But yeah, I said I need to go to the games because that's my sense of socializing. I did take my kids to the library quite often, and on Tuesdays they'd have Children's Day, and so they'd read stories and do a little activity with them. So we made it there quite frequently too. So just anything I could find to go and be around people.
Yeah. And what was your circle like before you moved? Did you have lots of other mom friends? Were you active in a church there? Like, did you go from being really plugged in to just in the middle of a ranch?
No, I wouldn't say that. I was working full time back in my hometown. So I knew people, but at that point my kids were so little, and my husband, he worked an hour away with his job. He was a crop sprayer at the time. And so we lived 2 blocks from my mom. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth to my mom's house. Like I said, it was my hometown. So I knew everybody in town, and we lived in town. And so it was easier to go out for walks and see people and visit with people there like that. As far as the church, we weren't real involved with the church there. We did go, but it wasn't on our top of our priority list, I guess.
You've been in Wyoming what, a decade now?
Yep, we're going on a decade. Yep.
Okay, and are you still not ranching?
Well, no, we are not ranching right now. However, it was not long after we moved back that we found ourselves the owners of some beautiful red Gelbvieh cows. So, yes. But we recently sold our cows that we had here just for time's sake. Like I said, my daughter, she's in every sport. She's volleyball, wrestling, more volleyball. She wants to be in all of it. And so running with the kids and him working full time, and now I work full time as well. We just didn't have time. We'll have the time to go fix all the fences when the cows decide they need to get out and go party somewhere else. And, we love our cows, but it was just at this point, we just needed to take a break from it. So So no, we are not ranching right now, but yes, we did ranch. Never say never, right?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if I should start laughing right away when you said that you told your husband we'll live there, but we won't be ranchers. I was like, we'll see. We'll
Well,
see.
I mean, my daughter does still have her and her grandfather have a wonderful herd of 60 some goats.
That's a lot of goats.
Yeah. You're telling me.
Are they dairy goats or meat goats?
Okay. Meat goats, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So
people have told me for years that because we live on acreage and I love all the homesteading things that we should get goats.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want goats.
Yeah, don't.
Okay.
They're cute when they're cute when they're babies.
Right.
And they're so fun when they're little.
Right.
And then they grow up and they're just kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I probably shouldn't say this because now they probably will, but none of them have jumped up on my car, so thankfully for that.
Oh. Are they just kind of out all over the place?
Well, we try to keep them in pastures with electric fence, but sometimes they don't always stay there.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I really want to make a dad joke about you having 3 kids and who knows how many goat kids, but I won't.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Yeah. Wow. So then how did you change your life on the fly with mothering these little kids when you're in your hometown with these kids and then you're pregnant and then you're moving and then you're like between 2 places because you moved and stayed for a month or whatever it was, then you went back for like 2 months, I think you said, finished up your job, then you moved back again to the ranch. How were you juggling all your little kids in that time?
Honestly, it's all thanks to my mom, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law. Without the 3 of them, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Wow.
My mom was great. She came over and helped get us packed up at our house, and then and to boot. So after we went back at the end of November for me to finish out my job, we ended up staying at my mom's house for those 2 months. The kids and I did, and so I had my mom there with me for those 2 months, which was helpful. And then my husband would try to come out every weekend he could, and thankfully, the reason we thought it was more doable is because we had the Christmas, New Year's breaks in there too. So we thought 2 months, but we have the Christmas, New Year's. We should be able to get through this okay. And so then my in-laws also came back out to Springs and brought the horse trailer, and we loaded up the horse trailer, and they brought everything. Them and my husband brought everything out here to the ranch, and then when we got to the ranch, my mother-in-law, she was a principal at our school here in town at the time. So she was busy with school, but when she was home, she was very wonderful about having the kids come up and hanging out with her for a little bit, or, just giving me a little break too. Same with my father-in-law. So yeah, it wasn't me. It was my in-laws and my mom and my husband that really got me through it. And with my husband, he come out here to fly, so he also would be gone for several days to a week at a time for flying to wherever they had to go. So yeah.
And were you just kind of used to that by that point of him being gone for stretches of time?
Yeah, kind of. Well, because as I said, I mean, that's kind of how we've been since we met, though, too. At that point, we never were in the same town together for the first couple years of our marriage, because he worked an hour away from where we lived in South Dakota. And before that, while we dated, which we didn't date for very long, but I was in Sioux Falls and he was over in central South Dakota, crop spraying, and then I went down to Sioux City for my clinical. So yeah, kind of. But then when you throw 3 kids into it, then it's a whole different story, though, too, because when it's just the 2 of you, it's a little more manageable. But by the time he would get home after being on a trip, I'm like, I need a break. Like,
Yeah.
I need out of here, you know. So he was very good when he was home, you know, on the nights that we had Bible study. He made sure he was home and I could go to Bible study, or my father-in-law would watch the kids while my mother-in-law and I would go to Bible study. Or it was a lot,
Yeah.
but we made it.
Even being pregnant and moving seems like a lot, but you had two little kids and were pregnant and then had a newborn and you were between two places. Like, that's chaos.
A little bit. I think that's just kind of, I think really that's what the name Wolfskill means, is chaos, because that's kind of just how our lives always are, you know. And you live on a ranch, and you know,
Yeah.
you live out on a homestead. You understand it's just chaos when you live out in the country and you've got, you know, at the time, cows. You know, you see
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon, and it's a picture of the cows, and one of the cows is holding the fence up and telling all the rest of the cows that are on the other side of the fence, "Hurry up, guys! They're leaving in an hour. We need to get out of here." You know, because that's usually how it happens. Like, whenever you have to be somewhere, that's when something's going to happen, and the cows get out, or yeah, or there's some catastrophe.
Oh, wow.
So but that's what it is. You know, you gotta roll with the punches, I guess.
That's, yeah. But you got to have time to roll too. I mean, it sounds like you were just kind of down on the ground for a while in the thick of it.
Yeah, I was.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned that you work full time now. How long have you been back in the work world?
I started when my youngest went to preschool. I started just volunteering at the school while he was at preschool, because he was there in the mornings, 2 days a week. And it's just like, by the time I get him there at 8 and have to pick him up at 11, it's just like, it's 20 minutes home and 20 minutes back to town. And so it's like, is it really worth it to go all the way back out to the house when I have to drive back in? You know, it just didn't seem worth it. And so, like I said, my mother-in-law at the time was the principal at the school, and so just visit with her, and she just suggested maybe coming in and volunteering. So I did. I went in, I volunteered, and I helped out in the special ed room a little bit, and I helped out just if teachers needed some laminating done, I would get that and laminate it and cut it out for them and stuff. So that's kind of what I did on the mornings when he was at school. And then when he started into kindergarten, I got my sub certificate. And so I started subbing at the school then. And then December of 22, there was a reading para position that came open. And so I applied for that and then started that job in January. So just since January of 23, I've been at the school full time.
Okay.
Which, when I was subbing, a lot of times it seemed like I was there full time anyways, because, you know, there's always a need for subs too. So
how has your parenting changed? Instead of being with your mom, you're with your husband's mom and dad. I mean, it sounds like you have a pretty good relationship with your in-laws, so that's good.
I do.
But how has your parenting changed from thinking your life was going to be going one way to having it go another, and now you're living on a ranch in small town Wyoming? Do you feel like you tried to get your kids more involved so that you could be more involved, or is that something that happened organically?
A little of both.
Yeah.
Library thing was for them. My kids all love books, and anybody you talk to that knows my kids, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, those Wolfskill kids, they'll always have a book in their hand. Like, everywhere they go, they have books in their hands." But also, along with that, though, I mean, I'm a reader as well. And it was just a time, you know, there was other moms that were taking their kids into the library for the reading hour too. And so it was just a nice time to meet a few moms there too. But as far as going to like the games and stuff, I mean, I did go to the games. And again, my mother-in-law was great. Even though she was the principal and she was there working, she would still take the kids and walk around the school with them and everything too. But it got to the point there for a while, it's just like, I don't know if I'm really up for going into the game today, just because I'm tired. and taking all three in would get to be a lot, trying to keep track of them, because I'd have one that would inevitably run off somewhere, and so then I'd have to go searching for that one. So yeah, I think it was a little of both. And now as I'm getting older and the kids are running for sports, or we're running for sports for them, and both of us working full time, I'm starting to find myself becoming more of a hermit, actually. The summertime, I was just asking my kids this the other day. I'm like, do you guys get lonely in the summer? Because, we try to go to the swimming pool and get together with some friends here and there, but it's just like, it seems like the summer flies by so fast, and we just don't get out much because we're busy doing things here on the ranch, and now we're trying to get a house built too. So it's just like, we just don't get out as much as we probably should in the summertime. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Don't you feel like too? I mean, at this point, at this stage of the game, when you're doing so much running for your kids and because of your kids, like there's only so much of you that you can pour out.
Right. And that's why I think, that's why I say I think I'm just becoming a hermit, because it's just like, after the school year and running for all the games and stuff, and we ended our school year going down to Florida because my son had won an academic competition, and so we went down to the national competition down in Orlando in science. And so we left 2 days before school even got out with him, and it was just my husband and him and I that went down for that. And so we're there for about a week, and then we come back, and we were home for about a week and a half. And then my daughter, she had been nominated to go to a knowledge camp in Casper. Well, when we got back, we'd gotten sick on our way back too, and so we were sick and trying to heal up from that. And then she had her camp that she had to go to for a week, and then right after that camp, she had also applied and got accepted to go to the camp that I was telling you about earlier, out in western Wyoming, which was the wildlife camp. And that was the week right after her first camp that she went to. So our whole month of June was just running too. And so by the time we got home after the last camp, I'm just like, I don't need to go anywhere. Even going into Spearfish to buy the big grocery items and do the big grocery shopping, it's just like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So yes, after running for them for sports and everything, it's just nice to not have to run. And so then I'm lax on having people over or getting together with other people, because I'm just like, I'm done.
Yeah. Honey, I was done before we started. That's how I feel a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I do get it though. And I'm sure that so many people listening do relate, because it's like you have that intention and you have that desire, but you don't have the energy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is it harder for you to find people who are willing to come out with you living out of town? Is it harder to get that scheduled?
It just seems like anymore, just everybody's still just so busy, like it's not harder to get them to come out. It's just finding the time, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because a lot of my friends around here live out in the country too. So it's not a matter of it's so far out of town. It's just everybody's busy, a lot of people have their kids and they've got 4-H stuff going on as well in the summertime, and so they're busy with that. And yeah, so no, it's not a matter of people not wanting to come out. It's just a matter of time for everybody.
Making it work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like sometimes with so much going on that maybe we're not hermits, but we just like we don't know when or what to say no to?
Right. Yeah. And you feel bad saying no and give yourself the guilt trip. So then you say yes, but then you give yourself the guilt trip on why did I say yes? Because I just don't have the time to do it. Yeah.
What would you say to a mom who finds herself like, well, this is my life now. I've got 3 kids, 3 and under. I'm moving to another state. My life is upside down and not at all how I planned it, but we're doing this. What would you say to encourage her to keep trucking?
Oh, I guess in one part, it's hard to say exactly. I mean, like for me, I was blessed because we were moving where we still had family.
Hmm.
Somebody moving somewhere that they don't know anybody, I guess that would be, make sure you're going to the library with your children, finding the activities that you can do with them that does get you out and amongst adults. But also, don't forget to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And what about for the mom today who has lived all through that and now is just kind of entering into a new stage? Because that's where you find yourself today in
Mm-hmm.
motherhood, heading into
Mm-hmm.
those teen years. So maybe to encourage yourself along the way, what would you say?
I would say, it's tough in the early years, but now, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I loved every stage that my kids have been in, but now the kids are just at that point where you'd like to say more self-sufficient, but they still always ask mom for help, or you know can't seem to find anything without mom's eyes.
So true.
But they're just at that stage now where they're all getting to really get into their personalities. I mean, they can crack jokes like no other, and it's just fun to be able to sit down and laugh with them. And I say, so it's tough at the beginning, but you can do it. Just takes lots of prayers, lots of help when you need it, and don't be afraid to ask for help. That's a big one too.
Love that.
If you need an hour break, ask. Like me, I was, like I said, thankful I had my in-laws, so I could send them up to grandma and grandpa's, and which is just right up the road, so they could even walk up there themselves. I just have to watch to make sure they got across the road. But it's worth it, and it's fun to see them growing into who they are, and just to be able to get to sit down and laugh with them. When they're little, you laugh not at them, but at their actions and their antics and stuff. And now as they're getting older, it's more laughing with them and about things that are said and jokes that we have in our family and things that have happened to us along the way, in our travels and stuff. So yeah, just it's hard, but it's totally worth it, and it's just exciting to see them growing and starting to spread their wings more.
For sure. Amen to all of that. Well, Natalie, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And thank you so much for being willing to be a guest on the podcast, for reaching out to me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me and let me do this, and hopefully I don't sound like too big of a goober.
Not at all. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Motherhood Experience podcast. To join our exclusive TME community, head over to themotherhoodexperience.com/learn more. Be sure to follow the Motherhood Experience on Facebook or Instagram, and please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment below, and we'll catch you next time.